Welcome. If you haven't already done so, let's start with the please turn off your cell phones. I hope that everybody who's here knows the event that you've come here for. So this is got a number of layers. Art from the Beloved Countries is partly about welcoming and honoring the Nigerian students at DSU who are an enormous part of our community, but are not necessarily always fully involved in many of the functions of the university and who have tremendous cultural riches to offer that we wanted to give a platform to. It's partly, more broadly, a celebration of the African and Afro-Caribbean diaspora, so the spread of peoples into the United States and elsewhere. So we have a number of different things on offering tonight. We have dance, we have drumming, we have readings, we have a talk back, we've got a lot of it. And so you're going to see an evening of interspersed events. The last thing I want to say, and that's going to lead into Abby Taylor, is this is a celebration of the last week of Black History Month, so sit back and enjoy it.
Hello, hello. I'm so happy to see all these friendly faces here. I'm really glad that you guys came out to support, and a question that came up this week was, why do we have Black History Month? And so, in 1976, the bicentennial of the United States, President Gerald R. Ford expanded African American Week into a full month. By reliving and remembering history, we create awareness of the struggles and challenges that African Americans overcame in this country. This proven perseverance will serve as an inspiration for the diverse community and the rest of America. February has become a time designated for reflection, rich history of this nation, and by celebrating Black History Month, everyone can be included in a tradition of acknowledgement, inclusion, and community engagement. Enjoy.
my glasses so I can see you before I see the text. These are texts that are coming from writers who are working in the United States, who hail from a number of different countries. A number of these texts, well, all of them we're reading because of the quality of the writing. A couple of them we're reading because we might have personal connections to them. I'm going to begin with a text by Edwidge Danticat. I will try not to be overly moved by it as I read it to you. First, a little background. Edwidge Danticat, born in January of 1969 in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, is a Haitian-American author whose works focus on the lives of women and their relationships. She also addressed issues of power, I should say addresses, injustice, and poverty. By the time she was 4 years old, Ms. Danticat, her mother and father had moved to the United States, leaving Ms. Danticat and her brother behind with an aunt and uncle. She joined her parents in 1981. She graduated from Barnard College in 1990 with a BA in French literature. And in 1993, she received her MFA degree from Brown University. The author of multiple novels, short stories, and collections of essays, Edwidge Danticat is the recipient of numerous awards and honors, including a Pushcart Prize, a National Book Critics Circle Award, the Bocuse Prize, and the Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Fiction. Danticat also won a MacArthur Fellowship, which is a Genius Award, and holds 2 honorary degrees. Tonight I'm going to read you an excerpt from the introduction of a book called Create Dangerously, The Immigrant Artistic Work. On November 12, 1964, in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, a huge crowd gathered to witness an execution. The president of Haiti at that time was the dictator, Francois, so-called Papa Doc, Duvalier, who was 7 years into what would be a 15-year term. On the day of the execution, he decreed that government offices be closed so that hundreds of state employees could be in the crowd. Schools were shut down, and principals ordered to bring their students. Hundreds of people from outside the capital were bussed in to watch. The 2 men to be executed were Marcel Numa and Louis de Bouin. Marcel Numa was a tall, dark-skinned 21-year-old. He was from a family of coffee planters in a beautiful southern Haitian town called Jérémie, which is often dubbed the City of Poets. Numa had studied engineering at the Bronx Merchant Academy in New York and had worked for an American shipping company. Louis de Bouin, nicknamed Milou, was a 31-year-old, light-skinned man, also from Jérémie. He had served in the U.S. Army, at Fort Knox, and then at Fort Dix in New Jersey, and had studied finance before working for French, Swiss, and American banks in New York. Marcel Numa and Louis de Bouin had been childhood friends in Jérémie. The men had remained friends when they both moved to New York in the 1950s after François Duvalier came to power. There they had joined a group called Jeune Haïti, or Young Haiti, and were 2 of 13 Haitians who left the United States for Haiti in 1964 to engage in a guerrilla war that they hoped would eventually topple the Duvalier dictatorship. The men of Jeune Haiti spent 3 months fighting in the hills and mountains of southern Haiti, and eventually most of them died in battle. Marcel Numa was captured by members of Duvalier's army while he was shopping for food in an open market, dressed as a peasant. Louis de Bouin was wounded in battle and asked his friends to leave him behind in the woods. Quote, "According to our principles, I should have committed suicide in that situation," de Bouin reportedly declared in a final statement at a secret military trial. Quote, "Chandler, Gerdes, 2 other Jeune Haiti members, were wounded. The first one asked his best friend to finish him off. The second committed suicide after destroying a case of ammunition and all the documents. That did not affect me. I reacted only after the disappearance of Marcel Numa, who had been sent to look for food and some means of escape by sea. We were very close, and our parents were friends." After months of attempting to capture the men of Jeune Haiti and after imprisoning and murdering hundreds of their relatives, Papa Doc Duvalier
wanted to make a spectacle of Numa and Drouin's death. And so, on November 12, 1964, 2 pine poles are erected outside the National Cemetery. A native audience is gathered. Radio, print, and television journalists are summoned. Numa and Drouin are dressed in what on old black and white films seem to be the clothes in which they've been captured. Khakis for Drouin, and a modest white shirt and denim-looking pants for Numa. They are both marched to the edge of the crowd toward the poles. Their hands are tied behind their backs by 2 of Duvalier's private henchmen, Tonton Macoute in dark glasses and civilian clothes. The Tonton Macoute then tie the ropes around the men's biceps to bind them to the poles and keep them upright. Numa, the taller and thinner of the 2, stands erect, in perfect profile, barely leaning against the square piece of wood behind him. Drouin, who wears brow-lined glasses, looks down into the film camera that is taping his final moments. Drouin looks as though he is fighting back tears as he stands there strapped to the pole, slightly slanted. Drouin's arms are shorter than Numa's, and the rope appears looser on Drouin. While Numa looks straight ahead, Drouin pushes his head back now and then to rest it on the pole. Time is slightly compressed on the copy of the film I have, and in some places the images skip. There is no sound. A large crowd stretches out beyond the cement wall behind the bound Numa and Drouin. To the side is a balcony filled with school children. Some time elapses, it seems, as the school children and others mill around. The soldiers shift their guns from one hand to the other. Some audience members shield their faces from the sun by raising their hands to their foreheads. Some sit idly on a low stone wall. A young white priest in long robes walks out of the crowd with a prayer book in his hands. It seems that he is the person in the crowd everyone has been waiting for. The priest says a few words to Drouin, who slides his body upward in a defiant pose. Drouin motions with his head toward his friend. The priest spends a little more time with Numa, who bobs his head as the priest speaks. If this is Numa's extreme unction, it is an abridged version. The priest then returns to Drouin and is joined there by a stout Macoute in plain clothes and 2 uniformed policemen who lean in to listen to what the priest is saying to Drouin. It is possible that they are all offering Drouin some type of eye or face cover that he's refusing. Drouin shakes his head as if to say, let's get it over with. No blinders or hoods are placed on either man. The firing squad, 7 helmeted men in khaki military uniforms, stretch out their hands on either sides of their bodies. They touch each other's shoulders to position and space themselves. The police and army move back the crowd, perhaps to keep them from being hit by ricocheted bullets. The members of the firing squad pick up their Springfield rifles, load their ammunition, and then place their weapons on their shoulders. Off-screen, someone probably shouts, "Fire." And they do. Numa and Drouin's heads slump sideways at the same time, showing that the shots have hit home. When the men's bodies slide down the poles, Numa's arms end up slightly above his shoulders, and Drouin's below his. Their heads return to an upright position above their kneeling bodies, until a soldier in camouflage walks over and delivers the final coup de grace, after which their heads slump forward and their bodies slide further toward the bottom of the pole. Blood spills out of Numa's mouth. Drouin's glasses fall to the ground. Pieces of blood and brain matter clouding the cracked lenses. The next day, Le Matin, one of the country's national newspapers, described the stunned-looking crowd as, quote, feverish, communicating in a mutual patriotic exaltation to curse adventurism and brigandage. The government pamphlets circulating in Port-au-Prince last week left little to the imagination, reported the November 27, 1964 edition of the American News Weekly, Time. Quote, Dr. François Duvalier will fulfill his sacrosanct mission. He has crushed, and will always crush, the attempts of the opposition. Think well, renegades. Here is the fate awaiting you and your kind. All artists, writers among them, have several stories, one might call them creation myths, that haunt and obsess them. This is one of mine. I don't even remember when I first heard about it. I feel as though I have always known it, having filled in the curiosity-driven details through photographs, newspaper and magazine articles, books and films as I have gotten older. Like many a creation myth, aside from its heartrending clash of life and death, homeland and exile, the execution of Marcel Numa and Louis Drouin involves a disobeyed directive from a higher authority and a brutal punishment as a result. If we think back to the biggest creation myth of all, the world's very first people, Adam and Eve, disobeyed the superior being that fashioned them out of chaos, defying God's order not to eat what must have been the world's most desirable apple. Adam and Eve were then banished from Eden, resulting in everything from our having to punch a clock to spending many long, painful hours giving birth. The order given to Adam and Eve was not to eat the apple. Their ultimate punishment was banishment, exile from paradise. We, the storytellers of the world, ought to be more grateful than most that banishment, rather than execution, was chosen for Adam and Eve, for, had they been executed, there would never have been another story told, no stories to pass on.
Ghanaian, American novelist Ghazi is the author of Homegoing, one of the most celebrated debut novels of 2016. Born in Ghana and raised in Huntsville, Alabama. Gaza earned a Bachelor's of Arts in English at Standard University and a Master of Fine Arts from the Iowa Writers Workshop. Homegoing, written at the age of 26 and published in 2016. Won Gaza the National Book Critics Award for Best First Book. The Penn Hemingway Award for First Book of Fiction, the National Book Foundation's 5th Under 35 Honors for 2016. And the American Book Award. Homegoing is a story of race, history, ancestry, love, and time that traces the descendants of two sisters torn apart in the 18th century. African across 300 years in Ghana and America. We will read for you tonight short sections from the novel in 2 parts divided by dance and drumming. Number 1, Izai. Ghana during the 1700s. She was taught to others. How many? She didn't know. She didn't see anyone from her compound. Not her stepmothers or half-siblings. Not her mother. The rope around her wrist held her plans out in supplication. Izai studied the lines on those palms. They led nowhere. She had never felt so hopeless in her life. Number 2, Ness. Alabama, during the 1800s. There was no drinking gourd, no spiritual soothing enough to mend a broken spirit. Even the Northern Star was a hoax. Every day Ness picked cotton under the punishing eye of the southern sun. She had been at Thomas Allen Stock, Alabama plantation for 3 months. 2 weeks before, she was in Mississippi. A year before that, she was in a place she would only describe as hell. Though she had tried, Ness couldn't remember how old she was. Her best guess? 25. But each year since the one when she plucked from her mother's arm had felt like 10 years. Ness's mother, Izai, had been a solemn, solid woman who has never known to tell a happy story. Even Ness's bedtime stories had been ones what Izai used to call the big boy. Ness would fall asleep to the images of men being thrown into the Atlantic Ocean like anchors attacked to nothing. No land, no people, no work. In the big boat, Izai said they were stacked 10 high, and when a man died on top of you, his weight would press the pile down like cooks pressing garlic. His weight would press the pile down like cook pressing garlic. Ness's mother, Carr, frowning by the other slaves because she never smiled, used to tell the story of how she would been cursed by a little dove long ago. Tell the story of curses and sisterless. She would mother as she swept, left without her mother's stone. When they sold Ness in 1796, Izai's lips had stone in the same thin line. Ness could remember reaching out for her mother, filling her arms and kicking her legs, fighting against the body of men who come to take her away. And still Izai's lips had not moved, her hands not reached out. She stood there, solid and strong. The same Ness had always known her to be. But though Ness had met warm slaves on the plantations, black people who smiled and hugged told nice stories. She would always miss the gray rocks of the mother's heart. She would always associate real love with the hardness of spirit. This day in late June, Ness waited in line for water beside Tim Tam. He was a gift of the Stockham family from their neighbors. The white man's and Tom Allen often liked to say that Tim Tam was the best gift he'd ever received. Better even than the gray-tailed cat his brother gave him for the 5th birthday, or the red wagon he received for the 2nd. How your day been, Tim Tam asked. Ness turned toward him slightly. You know how these days the same? Ness turned, a sound that rumbled like thunder built from the cloud of his gut, expelled through the sky of the mouth. Eyes closed, you right, he said. Ness was not certain she would ever get used to hearing English. Spit on the lips of black people, and Mississippi had spoken to her toy until their master caught her. He'd given Izai 5 lashes for every twee word Ness spoke. And when he spoke, seeing her battered mother had become too scared to speak, He gave Ezra 5 lashes for each minute of Nessie's silence. Before the lashes, her mother had called her mom after her own mother. But the master had whipped Ezra for that too, whipped her until she cried out, "My goodness," the words escaping her without thought, no doubt picked up from the cook, who used to say and punctuate every sentence. And because those had been the only English words to escape Ezra's mouth, without her struggling to find them, she believed that she was saying must has been something divine, like the gift of her daughter, and so that goodness had turned into simply Ness.
Let's try it to Mongama. Shashi Fata. I got to get one corner. I just want to put some food on it. What it? Food on it. Come on, food on it. Food on it. Yeah. But can it be? Can it be? Can it be? What it? Can it be? Can it be? Come on, can it be? Can it be? Can it be? Can it be? Can it be?
Mbolo Mbwe is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Behold the Dreamers, which won the P.E.N. Faulkner Award for Fiction, the Blue Metropolis Words to Change Award, and was an Oprah's Book Club selection. Named a Notable Book of the Year by the New York Times and the Washington Post, and a Best Book of the Year by close to a dozen publications. The novel has been translated into 10 languages, adapted into an opera, and optioned for a movie. A native of the seaside town of Limbe, Cameroon, and a graduate of Rutgers and Columbia Universities, Mbolo Mbwe currently lives in New York City. Mbwe came to U.S. to go to college. After losing her job during the financial crisis of 2008, she had to start over from scratch. And that led to her sitting down to write her debut novel, Behold the Dreamers. Her protagonists, Jende and Neni, are two Cameroonian immigrants trying to make it in New York, but the recession threatens their livelihood and strains their marriage. The novel is her exploration and expression of how the financial crisis affected her perspective on America. For me, personally, she said during an interview on National Public Radio, the financial crisis laid bare a lot about the way in which the American dream is not that accessible to everybody. We will read for you tonight one section of this novel. Tell me about Limbe, Clark said. I want to hear about this place where you grew up. Jende smiled. Oh, sir, he said, his voice rising with nostalgia. Limbe is such a nice town. You have to go there one day, sir. In fact, sir, you really must go. When you go, you will see a sign welcoming you as you enter. The sign is special, sir. I've never seen a sign like that welcome anybody to any place before. You see it just as you are coming down the road on the way from Douala. After you pass mile 4, nobody can miss it above their heads. It is in big letters, supported by 2 iron red pillars going from one side of the road to the other side. It says, Welcome to Limbe, the town of friendship. When you see that sign, sir, no matter what, whether you're welcoming to Limbe just for one day, or to stay for 10 years, whether you are big or small, you will feel happy that you have made it to Limbe. You will smell the ocean breeze coming from plenty of miles away to salute you. That sweet breeze, it will make you feel like truly there's no place in the world like this town. by the ocean called Limbe. Interesting, Clark said, closing his laptop. It is, sir, Jende replied, eager to tell more. He knew Mr. Edwards was opening up to hearing more. After 3 months of driving around together, he'd come to realize that whenever the boss needed a short break from his computer or his phone or the papers scattered on the back seat, he asked him questions about his childhood, his life in Harlem, his weekend plans with his wife. And then, after the welcome sign, sir, he continued, as you pass through Mile 2, you will see the lights of the town at night as they're shining all around you. The lights are not too bright or too many. They're just enough to say this town is made of magic. National Refinery on one side of the shore, fishermen with their nets on the other side. Then you enter Mile 1, sir. You begin to really feel like Limbe. It's something else, sir. Sounds like it. Ah, yes, sir. Limbe is very special, Mr. Edwards. In Limbe, we live simple lives, but we enjoy our lives well. You will see it when you visit, sir. As you keep on driving through Mile 1, you will see young men buying grilled corn on street corners and old men playing draughts. Some of them look like those mermaids in the ocean. The older women tie 2 wrappers, one on top of the other. That is how mature women like to dress. Soon after, you will be a half-mile junction. There you will have to decide whether to turn right toward Boda and the plantations left toward Newtown, where I am from, or continue straight toward Down Beach, where you will see the Atlantic Ocean. Fascinating, Clark said. I swear to you, sir, it is the best town in Africa. Even Vince says it's the type of town he wants to live in. Of course he did, Clark said. He looked up at Jende in the rearview mirror. Why did you come to America if your town is so beautiful? Jende laughed, a brief, uneasy laugh. But sir, he said, America is America. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Everyone wants to come to America, sir, everyone. To be in this country, sir, to live in this country. Ah, it is the greatest thing in the world, Mr. Edwards. That still doesn't tell me why you're here. Jende thought for a second. He thought about what to say without saying too much. Because my country is no good, sir, he said. It is nothing like America. I stay in my country, I would have become nothing. I would have remained nothing. My son will grow up and be poor just like me, just like I was poor like my father. But in America, sir, I can become something. I can even become a respectable man. My son can become a respectable man. And that could never happen in your country? Never, Mr. Edwards. Why? Clark said. Jende waited for him to finish his conversation. As he was muttering off, because in my country, sir, Jende said, his voice 10 decibels lower, far less unbound and animated than it had been before, he heard that someone was in danger. See, you do not come from a family with the name. Forget it. This is just how it is, sir. Someone like me, what can I ever become in a country like Cameroon? I came from nothing, no name, no money. My father is a poor man. Cameroon has nothing. And you think America has something for you? Ah, yes, sir, very much, sir, he said, his voice escalating once more. America has something for everyone, sir. Look at Obama, sir. Who is his mother? Who is his father? They are not big people in the government. They are not governors or senators. In fact, sir, I hear they are dead. And look at Obama today. The man is a black man with no father or mother, trying to be president over a country. "1 million times, sir," Jende said, 1 million times. Look at me today, Mr. Edwards, driving you in this nice car. You are talking to me as if I am somebody, and I am sitting in the seat, feeling as if I am somebody.
Number 3, Willie. New York, early 20th century. Cleaning the javelin was not too difficult. Willie would drop Carson off at the Bessie's before dinner time, and then she would head over to the 644 Lenox Avenue. It was the same work that she did for the Morrises, but different too. The jazzing audience was the whites only. The performers showed up on the stage every night, where they looked like Slender Man, tall, tan, and terrific. Meanwhile, as far as Willie could see, 5'5", light-skinned and young, Willie would take out the trash, sweep, wipe the floors, and watch the men as they catch the people on stage. It was all so strange to her. In one of the shows, an actor had pretended to be lost in the African jungle. It was wearing a grass skirt and had marks painted on his head and arms. Instead of speaking, he would grunt. Periodically, he would flex his pecs and pounce his chest. He picked up one of the tall, tan, and terrific girls and draped her over his shoulder, like she was a rag doll. The audience had laughed and laughed. Once Willie saw a show through the shield of her words that was meant to be a portrayal of the South, the 3 male actors, the darkest Willie had ever seen in the club, picked cotton on stage. Then one of the actors started complaining. He said the sun was too hot, the cotton too white. He sat on the edge of the stage, lazily swinging his legs back and forth, back and forth. The other 2 went forward and stood with her hands on his shoulders. They started singing a song that Willie had never heard before. One about how grateful they should all be have to such kind of master to take care of them. By the time they finished their singing, they were all standing up again, back to picking cotton. This wasn't the South that Willie knew. He wasn't the South her parents had known either, but she could tell from the voices of the men in the audience that none of them had ever stepped foot in the South. All they wanted was to laugh and drink and whistle at the girls. It made Willie almost glad she was one of them that was cleaning on the stage instead of singing of it. Number 4, Mazozi, the U.S. circa 1972. Mrs. Pinkston was putting on a black culture event for the school, and she asked Marjorie if she would read a poem. The event, called The Waters We Wade In, was unlike anything the school had ever done before, and it was to take place at the beginning of May. Well, after Black History Month had passed, all you have to do is tell your story, Mrs. Pinkston said. Talked about what about Africans being Africans meant to you. But I'm not African American, Marjorie said. Though she couldn't exactly read the look on Mrs. Pinkston's face, Marjorie knew instantly that she had done something wrong. She wanted to explain it to Mrs. Pinkston, but she didn't know how. She wanted to tell Mrs. Pinkston this at home. They had a different word for African Americans, Akata. The Akata people were different from Ghanaians, too long gone from the mother continent to continue calling it the mother continent. She wanted to tell, but the look on Mrs. Pinkston's face stopped her from explaining herself at all. Listen, Marjorie, I'm going to tell you something that maybe nobody's told you yet. Here in this country, it doesn't matter where you come from. First, the white people run the things. You're here now, and here black is black. She got up from her seat and poured them each cup of coffee. Marjorie really didn't even like coffee. It was too bitter. The taste clung to the back of her throat like it couldn't decide whether it wanted to enter her body or breathe out of her mouth. Mrs. Pinkston drank the coffee, but Marjorie just looked at hers. Briefly, for only a second, she thought she could see her face reflected in it. Number 5, acknowledgement at the end of the homegoing. I am incredibly grateful to Stanford University Chapel Lug Fellowship, the Moraes Foundation for the American Dream Fellowship, the University of Iowa's Dean Graduate Research Fellowship, and the Whiten Fellowship for supporting this work over the last 7 years. Many thanks to my agent, Eric Siminoff, for being a sure and so wise, a fierce advocate for this novel. I am also grateful for the rest of the wonderful team at WME, especially Raphael Ledet and Gilles, Anna Marie Bluminghagen, and Catherine Smitheregs, for so brilliantly representing me to the rest of the world. I owe so much to my parents, Kwaku and Sophia Dasa, who, like so many immigrants, are the very definition of hard work and sacrifice. Thank you for cutting the path so that it might be easier for us to walk. Thank you to my brothers, Kofi and Kwabena, for walking with me.
Chris Abani is part of a new Nigerian writer working to convey to an English-speaking audience the experience of those born and raised in Africa. Abani began writing at a very young age and published his first novel, Masters of the Board, while he was a teenager. The plot of the novel, a political thriller, proved uncomfortably close to actual events. It mirrored a coup that was carried out in Nigeria not long after, and Abani was thrown into jail for 6 months on suspicion of having helped organize this attempted political overthrow. He continued to write after his release from jail, but was imprisoned again 2 years later after the publication of his novel, Sirako. The author was again released after a year of detention, but following another year of writing, during which he composed several anti-government plays. They were performed on the streets near government offices. Abani was once again imprisoned and placed on death row. Able to escape after 18 months, thanks to the bribes his friends paid to the prison officials, the writer immediately went into exile and settled in England for several years. Since 1999, Chris Abani has been a resident of the United States. Many of you, if you watch any of the TED videos, he has one of the most watched TED videos, and the name of that TED Talk is On Humanity. I'm going to read one of his poems for you today. It's called God's Country. number 2 in this chapter. There is no native land. We are all on a platform, waiting for a train that almost never comes. The express screaming through the station is a dragon. Sometimes snow, sometimes sun, sometimes we say, this is my station. In truth, it's all journey. No one gives, no one takes. The true miracle is that love happens all the time. If there is a native land, then it is its geography. I believe in God. There, I said it. This only proves I am Nigerian. Victor had a monkey. I met with the last name, Mr. Modestus Tempe Esquire. She turned out to be a girl. This is the problem with naming.
Hey.
and there were a lot of other stuff attached to that. So my father was so pissed off at me because he knew I tried so much to write the exams. So he told me that.
You might want to add a detail there. You talked very specifically about the
Yeah.
problem of corruption in
Yeah,
the
there's
university
corruption
system
in
and paying
university.
for good grades.
Yeah, some people pay for good grades and stuff like that. Then my father was like, he's going to take me to Ukraine to study medicine because I'm be a medical doctor. So there are like agents back in my country who you're going to talk to, and they'll help you process your visa and everything to the country you're going to. So when we got to the office, to the, those that wanted to take me to Ukraine, my dad had paid part of the money already. Then the next day or so, it was like, doesn't think Ukraine is going to be good, that we should come to the US. Then we met a man called Dr. Oni. Yeah, he was the one who brought almost all of us to the US. So, we wrote our SAT and TOEFL. Then I got my admission to DSU State University. I didn't know what this was before coming here. I didn't know anything like DSU State University. After about 3 months or so, preparing for my visa interview and everything, then I went to the embassy. A lot of people get denied the visa on their first time. There's some people experience here. But on my first day, I got my visa and it was so good. My mom was happy. She was like, oh, good. Then I started thinking of how it's going to be different, leaving my family and everything behind. On getting to the US, everything was different at first. The place was beautiful, not there on the floor, everywhere was clean. No noise around, because back in my country we mostly sleep with noise. That's what makes us so considerate. Yeah. Yeah, I have to sleep so quiet. Yeah, and sometimes when we make noise at our apartment, they call the cops on us that we're too loud. So I found a lot of different things over here. The modes of transportation, going to classes, the way they give us homeworks, because in my country, in university, we didn't have a lot of homework. You just go to class, go to class, go to class. They hardly give you homework. Then you write your test and you fail. So, well, over here we had a lot of homeworks. Because I had to take the ESL classes at first for English, the name of class, English as a second language. Then I was like, this is too much homework every day. I thought it was going to be hard. I hadn't gotten into my major classes. I was just taking English. When I got into my classes, then I discovered ESL was easy. Yeah, starting with biology, during the summer I took 14 credits. That was stupid of me though, but it was too much. But I coped through. I got a B. I got 2 B's and an A. So there was when I got to the fall semester, I took just 17 credit hours. Then I was taking a class called the RHS class. It's like a program for pre-med students, pre-nursing, and all of that kind of medical stuff. Then there was this trip to Las Vegas. They said we're gonna go down to Las Vegas and help people and give out immunization and stuff. In my mind, while going to Las Vegas, I was like, oh, I'm the only black person here, and I'm also a Muslim, so I was like, they could discriminate on me and stuff like that. Then I told the head of our that on Fridays, as a Muslim, we get a pray Jumat service together. And I was like, oh, okay, there's no problem with that. We'll just take, they're gonna take me there. On my way, on Friday, when we're at Las Vegas, all the guys with me, they all came to pray with me, and I was so surprised. I thought they were gonna be like racist towards me and stuff, but they were all good to me. They all wanted to hear my story from Nigeria and everything. I felt among them, although sometimes my accent was different, so but every other thing was good. Almost everything. Yeah. So when I started working in the school, I started working landscape. It was hard work, so difficult. Then it was during the summer, and I was taking classes to pray, because as a Muslim, you gotta pray 5 times a day. So what I do is, from work, I just go home to pray. I didn't tell my boss I was a Muslim or anything. Then, during the Ramadan fasting for Muslims, we fast for 30 days. You wouldn't eat during the day and everything. I was so weak while working. Sometimes I'll just sit down. My boss look at me, why complains every time. Why didn't tell her that I'm a Muslim and I'm fasting? Then one particular day, she saw me so tired, and she was like, "Hey Malik, what's wrong?" Then I told her that I'm a Muslim and I'm fasting, blah, blah. And she was like, "Oh, you could have told me this all along." And she reduced what I was doing. She just asked me to clean tables from digging it out. Then she gave me a spot to pray instead of going on during classes. And I felt that was so good. Then I felt among that. Not everyone is actually racist in the US. When I went to my, so I started working at the pedestrian center because I couldn't do the landscape anymore. The first thing I told my supervisor that, hey, I'm going to get a spot to pray, that I need to pray. And she was like, "Oh, that's cool by me." I didn't know I was going to get accepted that easily, but it all turned out to be fun though. And that's basically my experience in the US. I've been here for over a year. Yeah.
So, I'm just going to tell you about the difference between Africa and America. It's a huge difference. I'm telling you. So, before coming to DC, I used to come to the US with my parents on vacations, and that was the first time I had the first-hand experience of what an American culture looks like. But I'm sorry, I don't look American as a culture. Because it's just plain, everyone just does the stuff, but in Africa we have cultures. Just like this evening, when Malik's dad came in, Shalika right here was surprised at the way we were greeting his dad, because we all just had to go down and greet his dad. But in the US, I always call my professor by the name. Probably, "Hey Jake, I didn't get this." But in Africa, you have to put probably Mr. Jake. Or normally, I would just say, I can't call Malik's dad by his name. I'll probably get my ass whooped. No, I can't call him by his name. But right here, I just call everyone by their name. Where I work, I have someone, and he's about 70. And I just call him, "Hey Josh, good morning." But in Africa, you're gonna get your ass whipped. No, or you're gonna get fired. And he gets that because respect is taken really seriously in Africa. And coming to yours, I think I had culture shock. It was meant to happen. I had culture shock because everything was different. Basically, the food was different though. Really different. McDonald's. No, I am telling you, everyone here right here, if we have someone bring in African food, we will all be happy because McDonald's isn't good. Are they spicy? Fries? No.
What's your least favorite American food?
Everything.
What do you hate the most in food here?
Wait. The pizza. That's good. But maybe sometimes I'll try burgers or something.
What? Burgers?
Not all the time, but that's all the fat. And I'm trying to think of it because I don't think. Well, the only food I don't like is probably sushi, but that's not American. I don't like sushi. It's raw fish. I think it is. It's like raw fish. But wait, what American food do we have? I don't know. You guys tell me.
Meatloaf, mashed potatoes,
Roast beef, pork roast, bacon, eggs,
fried chicken.
mashed potatoes.
I think fried chicken's for everyone.
Apple pie. Yeah, pancakes.
I have a fun story to tell you guys. So, over the Christmas break, I took English class with Selena, and I think I had the best professor ever. So over Christmas, she gave back at me and my friends over Christmas, and she made jollof rice. She made Nigerian food for us. And
Jello fries.
yeah.
Can you explain those for those of us who haven't eaten them?
Well, I wish I could show you guys a video of a pasta that had jollof rice, and it was like, wow, jollof rice! You know, I think it's the best in ever.
Yes.
I just wish we had some. You guys could try it, and your life is going to change forever. Jollof rice. I bet you. You can trust me on this.
Do we have more questions? Either for Oreo, for anybody else here?
What's the question?
Are there more questions? It was hell.
Good evening, guys. Good evening,
Everyone,
everyone.
this is Shama.
Hi, my name is Shama Koje. I go to Dixie State University. I'm a junior. Anywho, I'm a theater minor, and I met Catherine this semester in Acting 1. And in the class, I took the class. I'm taking the class as well with Abby, and like 2 weeks into the class, she mentioned something about art from the beloved nations, and she talks to a lot of African people in Dixie, and she was like, she would like for all Africans that can participate to come in together. And yeah, Abby, that's Abby talking, and you know, do something together, bring all the art, the music, and everything we can. And I was like, oh sure, we'll talk about it. We'll try and talk to them about it. And we started rehearsals, and we running like Shani. She's an African American, and she's a wonderful person because she blended in so well with the Africans. Now she understands their accent, so we can't say anything bad when she's there. And rehearsals were really, really difficult because first of all, you have to control your emotions with dancing because not everyone understands what you're saying at first. And we had to do everything. To be very honest, we did all this in a week. So you can imagine how much work we put in this.
We have a certain number of rehearsals scheduled, but once the students who are dancing, once the dancers realize, particularly the women, once they realize a little bit more about the venue, suddenly it was, oh my gosh, we need to rehearse every night. And it started with, okay, we're going to put in an hour a day. But I kept hearing reports back from Abby of, okay, well, we started at 9 o'clock after our regular rehearsal and we finished at 2. So the amount of work that went into this in a short time was absolutely extraordinary, including things like putting together the costumes and all of these elements. There was a huge amount of collective energy happening that I had very little to do with. These guys did it.
And also, I'd like to give kudos to the boys because they had less than a week to, one night to rehearse their whole dance, and they did everything. I'd like one of the boys to talk about it.
Wesley, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Wesley, and I'm from Nigeria. Pertaining to the dance that we rehearsed, it was not easy because the girls have already started their own rehearsals, and so when we came in, we were like, okay, we need to do something to get going because the girls are going faster. So, yeah. So it took us that night, but we spent a lot of time in the night from like 9 to like 2 in the morning, and we had to practice until we actually got something that we could hold on to perfect the next time we come, and maybe the next other time. It just took us about 3 days to get everything together. But it was a lot of hard work and a lot of smart work too. So we all share the ideas, each of them bringing their own ideas and trying to put everything together, because we have this saying that 2 heads are better than 1. So when 2 heads actually bring something together, it's better than 1 person bringing the whole thing together. And it unifies the dance and unifies the happiness and everything. So I'm grateful for each and every one of them, be able to stick to the very end of this and be able to share their own ideas, and we all have a happy ending.
My name is Nike, but people can pronounce it like told to call me Nike. The question I have is, most times when Americans see black people, they like ask questions, some kind of questions like do you lions or something, or did you walk here? Yeah, like I just want to ask, like, why do you think we are like under-civilized or something, or living in the bush, something, we don't wear clothes? Yeah.
Oh, please. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry, hi, my name is Temi Ojo. I'm Nigerian. Yeah. Oh, okay, sure. I didn't do that to solicit applause, I appreciate it. So I wanted to answer that. When I came to the US, just like you guys, I swear to God, as I'm watching, certainly from your story, you just sort of took me back years, because I went to a lot of the things you went through, you know, and I'm from California. I just flew in for this afternoon just for this. And it's actually quite interesting, because I was telling Abby that I'm working on a screenplay. I'm a filmmaker. I'm working on a script. My next film is exactly about my first 5 years in the US. So sort of like turning from an African into an African American, just going through that process where everything bewilders you, and suddenly you start to understand the patterns and why things are the way they are. So to answer your question, I just think a lot of America is somewhat isolated. The US is a very media-isolated country. You know, the first time I came to the US, I was bewildered to find out that CNN in the US is very different from CNN outside of the US. And that was a big shock. You know, and that was the first taste for me to see that, wait a minute, the US media isolates its people. You know, and as a result, what people imagine or people experience of Africans through media or through books or things of that sort are usually very incorrect, you know, and these are things that are still being fixed. I mean, otherwise, why would Black Panther be such a big hit? Right? These are things that are yeah. So, you know, so the media, just looking at it from an outsider and someone that's now living in the US for quite a while, I feel like I understand now. I used to get so offended. I remember I was on a basketball court playing basketball with some folks who were African Americans, as a matter of fact, and very early when I first came, and they asked me a lot of questions I felt were just completely insulting and ridiculous, you know. Oh, so you play basketball? Did you guys used to play basketball naked? Did you, you know? I'm like, yeah, I really don't, because I broke my anyways. So, you know, but over time I came to understand that also in Nigeria we do have our certain ignorances about Americans, you know? And it's sort of like, I found that it's not something that I can point finger and say, because some of my cousins in Nigeria do ask me things I would categorize as stupid about Americans as well. You know, so it's just without, you know, that we've sort of crossed the pond and we get to go back and forth, there's a certain privilege that I feel like, I'll speak personally for myself, there's a certain privilege that I have to understand this world and to understand that world, and then I don't get so offended when people ask me things that I think are frankly, categorically stupid. Yeah. For example, when the president calls African countries the asshole, you know, it's yeah. So, you know, I don't think he meant it to insult. I think, in truth, the media has portrayed African countries that way, you know, and that's one of the things that my film is particularly addressing. So, thank you.
double doing it. It's a pain in the butt. But anyway, I took a cultural class last semester, like Intro to Cultural Communication, which I found very interesting. And the biggest thing we talked about, it was how the U.S. is how we are very like, kind of Ethiopian, like we're very like prideful of ourselves. And like he was talking about how isolation happens. We really do isolate ourselves. And that's probably why the biggest shock is some peers who are from Nigeria, they're like, wow, I've like never heard of that. And like it's the portrayal of the media that happens. And I think it's amazing that you guys come here and you're like willing to put up with all the questions and the like different looks people get. You're like, whoa, they're different from me. But that's like so amazing to me because it's like you guys are out here doing it, living your lives and making a difference. When honestly, it's like so people in America, they're so like, they culture shock themselves like from going to like, I'm from Idaho and I like travel to New York or like travel to Mexico or travel to California. And I'm like, wow, every location is different. And I think people don't take the time to learn about other countries. They just assume and like the media tells them something like, okay, this is what it is. But they don't take the time and the effort to research it and be like, no, this is the truth. And like, you know, like learn from themselves. A lot of people don't do that these days. Which is why I also think it's amazing you guys are here learning for yourself what America actually is and like gaining so much more knowledge, which is like truly amazing. So like kudos to you guys for coming here. That's awesome. Thank you.
Now living in Utah. I'm older, and my experience tells me that every area has its own culture. And if that's the only thing you experience, then that's what you expect of the rest of the world in many ways. You just assume that your culture is the only one. I mean, just unconsciously. And without more cross-cultural experiences, it's difficult to educate each other that we're all human beings. Mary and I have been to Uganda a number of times. And every time I go over there, I'm the only white guy there, and then they find out I'm an American, and they all have this assumption, almost all of them have the same assumption about the American. And it's a wrong assumption about who we are. I'm not an extremely wealthy human being.
Misunderstanding, and we don't even communicate about that. We have a thing that we don't even speak English for some reason because we have an accent. So that's where the miscommunication comes in. And would you like to say something?
Yeah, there was, if we could go around, kind of coming down.
I think that it's not just the African Americans. I think that the Africans don't like them. I think Africans also think that African Americans don't like them too. So it's a big misunderstanding, and I don't know, some people like to believe that, oh, we're so different, but we're really not. It's just where we grew up and kind of the culture we're used to. So if we met, if we're all around each other, we wouldn't say we don't like you, we're fine with everything. Because it's like, unless you're just a bad person and you just don't like people. So that's about it.
Just going to pass it this way, and then around this way.
Hi, my name is Amy, and you're from Nigeria. Exactly what Shama and Brink were saying, you're both right. Sometimes I feel comfortable with white people than African Americans because when they look at us, they don't want to talk to us. I don't know, that's what I felt. And now that Shawnee's saying it, maybe I'll talk to some of them now because I like Shawnee, she's so nice. And if all of them are like that, then we're cool. So that's it. Maybe I'll start talking to most of your friends now.
Can you introduce yourself to everybody? Because I'm only going to speak for that. Okay.
I'm pretty much a big loud mouth, so I don't need a microphone. But I wanted to share an experience. You know, I'm almost 62 years old. And when I was in college, I went to college at 15. And I had some, so 2 years later I went into an apartment, and my neighbors were Nigerian. And on one side, the neighbors who were Nigerian, on the other side, there were white neighbors. And it was the first time that I felt like my white neighbors, who had never made any they just, kind of dissed us. They weren't very engaging. But when the Africans moved in, then they were the ones who were being invited to dinner. And it was another level of racism, but we also have racism among African Americans because of the color of your skin, there's that scale. But it was the first time that it was exponentially seen to me that white people saw even a Nigerian who was the same color as me, actually, I might have been darker than them, but they were perceived as someone superior to African Americans. And back then they weren't called African American, you were black. And I think that is some of the roots of what's still somewhat experienced in America today. There is a hierarchy, a priority given when you are somewhat, I hate to say it in this way, but you're, if I was to use the word, they're children in this audience out there, almost somewhat a bastard to the country. And even though everyone white came here from some other ancestry, whether they were Irish or one of the colonizers who came here prior, there is still that element of hierarchy that we see today, and which is why we're doing, that's a component of this particular program.
And then we'll pass it around to Oreo, to you, sir. I think, Oreo, could you wait just one moment, because Jabril is not Will you introduce yourself?
My name is Jibril Ndoi from Senegal and from Nigeria. Because I did not remember practicing drumming just in a short amount of time, and what we did today, if I was asking you to give me a Nigerian nationality, I believe that you'll give it to me because we work together. And I moved here last April, and I am an artist full-time, living in California for 27 years. But what I have learned about race, relation, art opened my eyes, because I did the Pan-African Film Festival more than 19 years, and I was featured artist of the year twice in that event, and the Black Art Film Festival in Georgia. I do Sausalito Art Festival in the Bay Area and the Beverly Hills Art Festival. What I have learned was not at first about black and white, or me as an African and white here. I have a lot of friends, African American artists, but I've been doing Beverly Hills Art Show for years, and Sausalito Art Show for years, because Sausalito Art Festival, 900 artists in the United States apply to be in that show, and they select only 100. And I've been selected in that show many times. But what I hear from the African American artists who I respect is, how did you go to this show? This is white show. I said, I don't think like that. I have my artwork, I send my diapositive and my image, and the judge selects from what they see. Because the more I have my mind set on what I am black, I'm not going to be chosen, I look myself. All the show I go, I send my application, my application and my what I call digital image, and they judge from that, not from my skin color. Then today, if I look at the statistic of my art collectors, I could say 65% are white. It's just a mindset. And you believe, sometimes you believe on something negative, it can be negative to the point where it can keep you from making friends. I chose this day to be one of my best days. Because at the Pan-African Film Festival, all filmmakers come there. All actors, I met all of them, some of them have my artwork. But we never have this. We never sit like this and talk. And this is today, after moving here last April, I feel that we have the Pan-African Film Festival here. I was used to that. I miss that. And I don't miss it anymore. And thank you for all of you. Thank you, Abby.
It's going this way, and then Oreo, were you?
If I may, I'd like to address the issue of African Americans disliking Africans, or allegedly disliking Africans, and vice versa. And again, I can only speak from a personal place. Again, when I came to the US, and not that long ago, but quite a while ago, without dating myself, I felt exactly the same thing, where it seemed like I was more embraced by the Caucasian Americans than I was by African Americans. And mind you, when I came to the US, I came to California. I moved into Pleasant Hill. Pleasant Hill is a small town in Northern California. It somewhat reminds me of St. George, at least back in those days.
Greener.
It's yeah, much greener. It's very suburban. And that's the way I thought the US was, where all homes are really nice and new, right? People are sweet, and their dogs poop and they pick up the poop, those kind of things. That's what I thought the US was. And then within about 6 or 8 months, I moved in with a family. Oh, I started calling it 15 as well, so we have something in common. Yeah. So because I couldn't rent a place by myself, I moved in with a family in Oakland, California. If you know anything about Oakland, California.
You don't pick up after your dog.
Yes, you don't pick up after your dog. And it's nothing like St. George. I can guarantee you that. So then that gave me a different experience of what America is. Because without that, I thought America was, suburban people, nice cars and all that. And then I moved to Oakland, California, where it's more predominantly African American. And I really got to understand and live with, essentially I formed a new family there, and I came to now finally sort of sync up with the mindset. And the way I applied myself while in school to feel like, so I could understand African Americans a little better, was in your curriculum, I'm sure they still have it, that you have to take a US history component for your classes. It's a requirement for graduating with a bachelor's degree. Instead of taking US history, I took African American history. It still met, and then there I learned, I felt like it changed my life, because I got to understand this proverbial chip that African Americans are said to have on their shoulder, about relationship with whites or relationship with blacks. You see, we come from a country, till today, my parents, I know none of my ancestors were ever slaves.
Yeah.
My parents and their parents and their parents' parents had land. African Americans only just got freedom less than 50 years ago. It's profound. It's profound to think about that. To think that your grandparents never had civil rights. We don't understand that as Africans, because we just are. We bear the names of our fathers and our fathers' fathers. These people bear the names of the people that enslaved them. It's a completely different mindset. And then there's issues of Jim Crow, there's issues of subjugation, which may not even make any sense to you because you don't even know what these things are. So there's a lot, when they talk about systemic oppression, there's a lot that I had to understand and learn about African Americans and why there's this distrust that they would have of Caucasians. Not that, on one hand, I feel like it's somewhat unfair because a lot of Caucasians, that was great-grandpa, it's not me. That's a system that was there, it's not who I am. So why am I being blamed for this system that's not there? I understand that, but I got to understand the African-American perspective on why they might have a reason to hate me. Because I am someone that has all the privileges that they wish they had, and I'm coming in here and looking, sometimes the people feel like you're looking down on them. Or could it be jealousy? I don't know what it is. But what I'm trying to say is that we come from a country like Nigeria at a time when things are, economically, we're holding each other back or whatever. We feel this way about Nigeria, but we're the ones holding ourselves back. African Americans have been held back by people that essentially built a country on their backs and deprived them of the rights and things. So I needed to get that education myself. No one could teach me that. I went to classes for years for that, to understand that. And once I understood that, now I felt like I got a better rhythm for what it is that blacks are going through here in the US. And that experience changes you also, because you cannot learn that and see things the same way. So you become more sensitive to the plights of African Americans, and you understand a certain distrust they might have. And what I try to do with my life is to try to, if I accomplish anything in my life, would be able to work to bridge this gap, to help African Americans. A lot of African Americans yearn, they hunger for what we take for granted, which is just go back to a country somewhere where you know where your parents come from. Most African Americans don't have that, and a lot of them yearn for that, or for them to even have another language to speak other than the one that was used to enslave them. It's so elementary to us, but it means a lot, to African Americans, at least in my experience. So anyways, I've gone longer than I intended to. I just meant to share this, that the perceived alleged hate or dislike that one has over the other is usually as a result of not understanding where each one is coming from. Africans, Nigerians think, gosh, you guys have the US, you guys are the US, gosh, you guys are not making much out of yourself. If we had this opportunity, we will make more of it. But you don't know. They never had it. Meanwhile, they're looking at you Africans or Nigerians like, wow, gosh, you have all this privilege of culture and knowledge, the way you greet your elders, there's all this respect that's been stripped from us, and we wish you knew it. Anyways, I just think it's compassion that's the key to building this bridge, compassion and education on both sides. Thank you.
So I think it's a good thing that he spoke first before me, because right now he just explained everything to me. Because I used to wonder why African Americans don't like black Africans. Because you hardly see Nigerians or any African being friends with the African Americans. It's really hard. Because I can tell you I have a lot of Caucasian friends already. But basically, we have a lot of black American students in Dixie. I think I only have about 3 friends that I know are my real friends. And I met a girl, her name is Bree, and she was really mad about me that she's Black American, and she is always mad that all of the Black Americans are not friends with Africans, because she's like, we all have the same skin color. Because I can tell you, there's this girl, she's in my art class, and we go through the same way every morning. She's coming back from class, and I'm going to class, and she doesn't say I, and she's Black American. I always try to say I, and she ignored me once, and I was like, okay. We have other Black American guys where I live. Sometimes they say I, sometimes they're with their friends that don't say I. But now I think you're making me understand maybe the whole issue they have with us Africans, but I always get mad because we all have the same skin color, and Black Americans are not supposed to be racist to Africans. To me, I think it's kind of stupid because we all have the same skin color. We all have the same ancestors. I just always get really pissed off when Black Americans segregate themselves from Africans, and to me, it's really annoying. That's why basically I just have a lot of white friends. Although I've been a victim of racism with white people like a couple of times at school, then I was really mad because someone asked me, do you live in arts? And I didn't tell you, I was gonna punch him in the face. No. Then he asked me, no, I just ignored this question. Then he asked, wait, how did you get here? And I was like, no, I didn't take a plane, I swam in the ocean, my back's on me. I was really mad about it. Like, every day, not every day, but sometimes people just keep asking stupid questions. And I think probably it's the fault from the media, because maybe they just portray Africa as a bad place or something. That's why people have this perspective of Africa as elephants and stuff. That's why someone asked me, do you guys live in arts? And I was gonna punch him in the face. I was really angry about it, but I guess most people didn't have knowledge about our Africans don't have knowledge of our culture, and that's why every person I meet right now, I just try to let them know how our culture is, so they have more knowledge of how African is.
Pertaining to what they have all said, I just want to say, when I got to school here, it was really hard, and because of the way I saw things and the culture shock and everything, and so I try to keep up with the pace of America. And most people would come to me with both white and African Americans. They would say, do you live in huts? Do you have cars in Africa? And I laugh and I talked to them and I said, why y'all think that we were still in that time we were chewing spare and running around the bush? So and I asked them and I said, you just think that it's all about Superman and Batman and all of that going on. You think we're like Shaka Zulu and every other stuff. And because they watch Tarzan and the Disney pictures of all the stuff. So, and there was this time when I was with a friend from Rwanda in East Africa, and his name is Fred. We always hang out a lot. He's like a brother to me. So we were in this restaurant. It was the first time me and him had gone to a restaurant. And then when we were there, he's like, Wesley, why is it that this white people always eat out in the restaurant? And I said, well, I don't know, you can ask one of these people eating. And he laughed and we just joked, and then he said, they should give us the kitchen because we need kitchen to cook, but they have kitchen but they don't cook in it. And I said, I don't know why they always eat out in the restaurant. And he said to me, do you know that in Africa we hardly eat out in the restaurant? In fact, the restaurant will go broke. He said, and then I said, yeah, we hardly eat out in the restaurant. I can't remember when my dad took me out in the restaurant to eat. And then he said, do you know the only time we eat out in the restaurant is when it's in our birthday, your Christmas, or when someone dies. So it's really hard in Africa for someone to go out in the restaurant and eat. And even the cooking system is hard, but people still cook no matter what. So they hardly go out to eat out in the restaurant. So, and there were most of the things we actually talked about, and we talked about people getting divorced, why white people always getting divorced so much. But in Africa, it's so hard to see someone divorcing his wife, and even though it's like the marriage is not really stable, it's shaken with a lot of conflicts and everything, but they just don't get divorced. They hardly get divorced. It's not they're paying for it too much, but they just don't want to get divorced. They think about kids, they think about family, they think about a lot. So growing up as a young man, I understand the differences of life, and I was coming here in America, and I've seen that people just want to act differently, and people just want to act the other way. So I feel like I don't blame people for most of the things they do, and because I know that it's what they've gone through in life, so I don't really blame them much. I receive a lot of racial acts and things like that from people who just asking questions. Hey, where is this boss going to? Are you going the same place that I am going to? And they say, why are you asking me that question? Why do you care? What are you asking me for? And I'm like, okay, no problem, sorry. So it was a lot of things going on with race and everything, but I've understood that I cannot blame an entire country or an entire race, maybe if I have been in this aspect of racial issue and things like that. So I can't blame an entire white people for them being racist because someone was being racist to me. And I can't blame the entire Black Americans for not wanting to come close to us Africans, because I know not everybody is the same. So I did not picture everybody as the same. We all have different attitude and different style. But in Africa, we have a culture, and this culture has actually blessed each and every one of us. It has made us stronger, faster, and smarter. And coming here in America, even when we face hard times and hardship, we still try to cope. And when I hear people say, oh, this person is depressed, he committed suicide, I'm like, what? Suicide? In Africa, you can't commit suicide. You can't commit suicide. Even when you want to commit suicide, your family will go, oh, we want to see you die right now. You must die. They'll tell you, if you don't die now, you're going to get a whooping. So they always want to make you see things the hard way so that you could be able to understand even when you see the sweeter part of it, so that you could blend to any circumstances you go through. Sometimes I wonder if my parents were my parents, because they always whip me a lot. And they have given me scars and a lot of stuff. But I'm like, sometimes I cry, I'm like, I go to my sister and say, is this people really my parents? And they just say, just relax. They don't come to me and say, oh, sorry for that. They'll say, you have to relax. And they don't pet me or do anything or rub my shoulders or rub my body. They just tell me, you gotta relax. That's all. And then I cry and kill the pain away myself. So everybody has grown to that lifestyle of fighting their own pain alone, so that they can be able to fight it even when they don't have anybody to fight it with them, so that they can be able to survive even when they don't have nothing. Even when I had a tooth problem, I was like, I went to the dentist said, oh, you have to pay $700 for the tooth and this and that. I'm like, I don't have that kind of money. And they said, there's nothing we can do, you don't have an insurance and things like that. And then I had to go home and had to push the tooth out myself, and it was a lot of work because I had to cry a lot before that went away. So it was very hard for me to do all of that, but I realized that this was one of the things that made me African, who I am. And no matter where I go, I will always remember that the family that raised me did it for the better of me, did it for me to become a better person. And I will not let anybody down, even though they are weak, even though it is white, even though it's African American, we are all the same. But my friend Fred, he said, do you know that we are different from these African Americans? And I said, how can you explain? And then he said, you know, when Africans meet African, it's like you were seeing your blood brother, but it's not your blood brother. I'm like, yeah, I know, because we all grew up like that. We all grew up with the same training. We understand each other's pain and where we all came from and the things we've been through. And in Africa, we always get this fear. We didn't grow to love our parents much. We grew up to fear them. And that has been stuck in our system for a long time. And most people say, oh, Wesley, you're shy looking at elderly people in the face and talking. I'm not shy. I'm just not used to talking to my elders and looking them in the face, because I didn't do that when I was back home with my parents and my brother. Because if I do, it's a problem. If I don't, it's also a problem. So it's just like that. We all grew up and we've understood that this is just African lifestyle. One of my best friends, he died because when we were younger, we were like 9, and we were all playing soccer together. We always play with our bare feet on the ground, so we always play and we have fun. And then when he got caught by something on his feet, so because he feared his parents would do something, would beat him, because our parents, if we got injured in anything, they beat us. So why did you get injured? Who told you to go out there? Why? And they still beat you on top of what you're suffering. The actual pain, your pain. And then when he realized going home to tell his parents would put him in trouble, would be more worse than the case. So he just didn't tell them at all, and the injury got infected with tetanus. And he was still trying to keep the pain for as long as he could, and then I heard one time that he was dead and he died. And it was so painful to me because I couldn't even stay and watch someone that we all grew up together as children die. And then I realized that this is what this is what Africa had made us to become. We all, because of the, so much respect and everything. So when I get to America and I see kids telling their dad, "Shut up, Dad," and I'm like, "You don't try that with my father." Yeah, you don't try that. Your parents won't even hit you. It's your brothers and sisters that's gonna do the beating for you. So it's just like that. So I am grateful for being here in America, and I'm also grateful for being African, and I love being African.
And I would also like to make sure that we give, oh, were you about to speak? Okay, then I'd like to make sure that Abby has a chance to speak. I have some questions for her.
Like he said, I love being African, and being African is amazing. And the culture, like, Nigeria is just a small part of Africa as a whole. So many different cultures and so many dances and dresses, and it's just beautiful.
Amazing.
But then, something talked about mental health and depression. That is one of my main problems with African training, because African parents, I think unconsciously, they tend to, like, what's the word? Downplay your emotion. They tend to downplay depression. Like, there's nothing like depression, you're just lazy. Like, you're just lazy and tired, and I don't know what's wrong with you. You have to toughen up, you have to work hard. Because there are a number of Nigerians alone that are depressed or have various mental health issues, but they can't speak out about it because people will just call them crazy. You're either crazy or you're lazy. There is no in between. There is no mental health. And I don't know, even now, I can't tell my mom, like, "Oh, I'm sad." If I tell my mom I'm sad or I'm not in a good place, she'll say, like, "Get over yourself." There's so many other, it's like, don't try to compare one person's mental health with another. Like, there's so many other people out there suffering so much more than you. So you don't get to be sad about something that's happening to you when some other people have gone through so much more and they're still crying. So, I don't know. One of my friends in high school, she never went to the hospital, but I'm pretty sure she had clinical depression because she had terrible lows in hostel, and sometimes her grades would just drop all of a sudden because she just had periods where she was just not okay. And she told her mom this, and her mom hit her and said, she gave her, like, in the middle of the school, beat her ass and said, "You're just lazy. Your friends who are getting A1s don't have two heads. They have the same head." So I just want to talk about it. Like, I don't know. I really wish that Africans could understand that mental health is just as important as physical health. And if you're physically healthy and you're not okay, it's just as bad. That's just about it. Yeah.
So one of us, I think it was Oreo, that said, Americans don't have culture. That's a lie. Because they do. Like, culture is the way of life, it's the way you live it. What we call football is not what they call football. Where they eat is not where we eat. What we eat is not what they eat. So the way they're living is culture. They have holidays, they have festivals, they have parties. It's just, everyone has culture. The way you're living is culture. So that's it. I just want to say that everyone, Americans, everyone has culture. Just because African is flashy and colorful and loud and funny and interesting doesn't mean Americans don't have culture. So
I don't need this is for you. Abby has worked unbelievably hard. So early on, I talked about how hard everybody who's involved in this show has worked. I don't know how much you know about how hard Abby has been working. It's been pretty much non-stop.
since this whole project started. It happened because Abby wanted to see it happen. It happened because she asked for it to happen. She put out a proposal. She drew an incredible amount of energy from quite a few people. Myself included, Jabril included, Janice included, all of you included. It has been an incredible action of gathering. All of you included are here because Abby has been running all over campus and giving out flyers, doing things herself, making sure other people are on top of things. How are you feeling? What are you thinking? What has this experience been for you? Talk about it.
Okay.
If there's no one question.
Just letting it all sink in, everything that's been said takes me back to 3 or 4 years ago when I had met a Nigerian. It was the first African that I had come in touch with and that I had started to learn about. And so I think it takes meeting one person from someplace different that will change you so deeply where you want to learn more about the people in the place that they're coming from. And so Black History Month to me, when I look at it, it's not if you're 1% Black or 100% Black, you are Black. And that's what I wanted to see on stage, is not division, because we see it every day. We see it in this community, we see it in the school, we see it in the media. So I wanted to see togetherness and just learning. When I look at my ancestors and what they've been through, everything they've fought for, and then I do see this type of perspective of some Black Americans, I think that our ancestors wouldn't want us now to resonate on what they experienced. They would want us to do it better and to be including of every race, everybody. You don't have to adapt to the African culture even though you learn about it and about that person. They do things a certain way. That doesn't mean you have to adapt to them, but be willing to learn about them. And even if you can't come to fully understand or comprehend because you've never seen what they've seen, just try to have compassion and try to have mercy with people who do ask questions that come across as ignorant. Just know that they're from a different place. And like I said, I think our ancestors, they're here, they're with us, and they see that there's struggle in dark places, and I think it's good to touch on it with Black History Month. I think it's good to talk about slavery and talk about what happened, but to not end or stay there for too long. We have to make this progress. I don't think we can make it alone. I think we can do it together. And so I really haven't gotten to know any of you that super well. It's just been practices. It's just been observation. But I really do have a respect from where you come from. I do. And I have like a lot of adoration. I like adore what you bring, how you are. It's different, and I wanted everyone in the audience to experience that also. That's what I wanted. I wanted conversations to be brought up, because these conversations won't end here. They will continue to happen out these doors, at the dinner table, in other settings. And that's how you make progress, and that's how you expand, and your eyes are open and you're aware. We need to have consciousness of other people and who they are. And that's just it. That's what I think. So thank you, all of you, for putting in the work.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you for all your hard work. I've had to push everybody really hard the last few days. I've been snappish, I've been demanding, I've been coming down hard on people when, oh, somebody talks, somebody rattles a piece of paper, or somebody is running down the hall when I want them running into rehearsal. I want to put that all behind me right now. This has been, I may get a little teary, this has been a really moving week for me. I don't know you individually. I see a collective energy and individual dancers. I have become so curious about Africa. I know nothing about Africa. I've traveled a lot. Africa is not a place I've been. I know nothing about the many different nations of Africa. I have had such a profound curiosity awakened in this past week. This has been an amazing ride. I am going to say very American style. I am sorry for driving you hard and snapping at you, and I am happy for the results we got.
Me too. Me too.
The last thing I'm going to say tonight, I promise. I'm really surprised, actually, to be honest, when Abby told me about this. Abby didn't know I was going to come to this. I met Abby at Sundance last month, was it?
Yeah.
Last month, yeah, it feels like a long time ago. And she told me she was thinking of planning something. It's just sort of stuck in my head, and we've sort of communicated via chat, etc. And she told me she was planning it, and I know, being someone that's organized events myself, how much work goes into it, and so I certainly wanted to. I didn't want to tell her that I was coming out from Los Angeles for this, but when I saw the opportunity, I just kind of jumped and I'm going to come out and just kind of, be here for her. But I didn't know I was going to meet so many Nigerians here, like seriously, like what, and I think everything happens for a reason. I really, really, really do, because I was already working on this film before I met Abby. And I didn't know I was going to meet people whom the film would be relevant to, which is just people that are new to the country and from Nigeria, and and they're seeing the U.S. in a certain perspective, the way I used to see it, and how my journey sort of transitioned. But I wanted to just share that there's a strong legacy before you guys. If I may address you Nigerian to Nigerian here, there's a strong legacy before you guys. I don't know if you guys know the studies that have shown, and historically over the past 15 years, as long as I've known it, that African immigrants are the most educated immigrant group in the US. Yeah. I can show you this on my phone right now. LA Times published it that same week that President Trump called African country immigrants as whole. So the African immigrants are the most educated immigrant group, and the most educated group, period, even within the local US. And in particular, the Houston Chronicle mentioned Nigerian immigrants are the most educated of all. I want to, I'm just sharing this to say that, you guys, you guys are coming behind folks that sort of laid a very strong pathway, and we know how tough Nigeria is, so it's no surprise we're sort of leading. Nigeria they carry last at this year, at all, right? So Nigeria they carry last means Nigeria is never last place. Yeah. So, but I just want to encourage you guys that despite what you may be going through day to day, whatever kind of racism or discrimination or misunderstanding or whatever it may be, that the U.S. is a fantastic place to be. And I think the U.S. needs you guys, whether culturally or you're intellectually. And as does Nigeria as well, but I think something the U.S. offers in terms of opportunity and in terms of just access and possibilities, is something that we cannot get at home, at least not yet. And I just really want to encourage you guys to don't let down, don't get too emotional or don't get too lonely. I know about that. Don't just go through it, because there's a precedent set before you, because and the world is going to recognize it. You guys are going to kick ass.
Thank you. I think we have Micah still here somewhere, and I think we need to let him go home. So I want to thank you for your long listening, for being such a lovely and present audience during this conversation. To all the dancers who are here, I'm going to do this kind of publicly, but I want to invite you, not tonight, but within the next 2 weeks, to my home for a party, everybody who worked on this. I want to, as Shama put it so beautifully, receive you. I know Alexei does too, so I'm really looking forward to that.